Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this Farming Connect webinar. So, yes, this afternoon's webinar is the Horticultural Development Scheme, the grant application, and I'm pleased to say that it's a collaboration between Farming Connect and Tyfu Cymru, and hopefully it will provide some hints, tips on how to best complete grant applications if you feel like you need to for your business. So just the housekeeping, as it's a webinar, you will be able to ask questions as we go. And if you can please put those questions into the chat function and we will answer those questions as we go through the webinar. If not, if we don't have time, we will try and answer them at the end of the webinar. So this afternoon, I'm pleased to say that we were joined by David Selwyn from Landsker Business Solutions, and David will be running us through his hints and tips on how to complete an application form. So David, I hand over to you.
Thank you very much, and I will just start sharing my screen in theory. If somebody can just give me the thumbs up. I can't see everybody, but if somebody can just give me a thumbs up, they can see a PowerPoint that says Horticulture Development Scheme. Okay, so yeah, I'm David Selwyn. I'm a director at Landsker Business Solutions, and today we are going to be talking about the Horticultural Development Scheme and a bit more about grants in general as well. I think there's some common hints and tips that you can take away from today, even if you don't go for the Horticultural Scheme. There may be other hopefully some other useful information there. And like I said, I've been with Landsker nearly 20 years now. You know, Landsker's sort of helped lots of customers. We've got lots of funding for people, nearly 130 million pounds worth of funding, and helped sort of create 5,000 jobs. So hopefully we know what we're talking about, and the information you're going to get today is part of that learning and that success that we've achieved over the years. Three key agenda items. First being eligibility. So are you eligible for the horticultural scheme? I suggest if you're not, you might want to stay on and hear some of the other hints and tips, but it might be less useful. What the application process involves, and then hopefully we're going to run through some of the questions and try to talk through some of the nuances within those. And then if we've got time at the end, there is going to be some top tips for grant applications, which are applicable certainly to the Horticultural Development Scheme, but also to other grants if you went for them in the future as well. So cracking on, because I'm sort of mindful of time, there's a lot to get through, especially if we're going to start talking through some of the questions. So if I go 100 miles an hour, I've been accused of speaking quickly before, so bear with me. So the Horticultural Development Scheme is a capital grant, so it is for things that you can hold and touch, etc., and not for overheads and other elements such as that. And it's aimed at horticultural producers. Okay, so you've got to be a existing horticultural company as it stands. If you're not an existing horticultural business and you're thinking of becoming one, there is going to be a startup horticultural grant that's being released in the near future as well. Okay, so it's probably going to have a lot of the same questions. So I would hang on and listen to this just in case we don't run one of these webinars in the future for that. And the aim of the scheme effectively is to support existing commercial horticulture producers to develop their businesses through investment in new equipment and technology that offer a clear and quantifiable benefits to the horticultural enterprise, in other words, the business. Enable horticultural businesses to sustainably expand production, diversify into new crops, improve production efficiency and enhance product quality, and enable horticultural producers to enter new markets, increase local employment and support the rural economy as part of the green recovery from COVID-19. So if you think you are ticking the boxes on there, that is a massive start. If you don't think you're ticking the boxes at the moment, hang on, because we may be able to get you to tick some of the boxes, even if you don't think your bank sounds central. Okay.
Indeed. We've got a question coming from Rhiannon.
Yeah.
Rhiannon's asking, what's the definition of a horticultural producer? As a flower farmer, is she covered under that heading? Okay,
hold that thought, and hopefully I'll answer that question in a second. And it's important to ask me, and please do ask me, if there's anything really fundamental such as that, and it's a bit not out of the ordinary, but it's right in the grey area. If there's a Venn diagram between eligible and not eligible, you're probably maybe in that central part somewhere. I think it's really important to contact the horticultural grant team themselves and actually physically ask the question. And this is one of my hints and tips for any grant you make. If you've got any doubt at all, ask the people who are going to be making the decisions. Because if I say yes to you and it's a no, or they've changed their mind, then it makes a massive difference. Best example I've got of that is the previous food grant had actually mentioned egg producers was an eligible activity. The first 20 applications they had was from egg producers. So internally they said no more egg producers, yet their guidance note still said that they were eligible. So you could make an application after they made that decision, and you would have been turned down and gone straight in the bin, and you wouldn't have been any the wiser. Okay, so one of my top 10 tips of grants is always try to create some kind of conversation with the grant officers before you enter the grant. I like to say it's embarrassing them into saying yes. If you've asked them lots of questions beforehand, they say yes, and then it's much more difficult for them to say no at the end, isn't it? So, but hopefully, let me just see if I can scoot on. Okay. It's mentioned here. So yeah, flowers. So horticultural crops are edible fruit, vegetables, ornamental plants, flowers, and tree nurseries. Okay, so all those in theory are classed as horticultural businesses. Let me just stop up again to where we were. So basically, this is a two-stage application. I'm lobbying to get this changed, but I'm not sure I'm ever going to listen to me. It's an expression of interest followed by a second stage application. However, you've got to make both applications at the same stage. You've got to make both applications by the 10th of March. Okay. So although it is an expression of interest, normally when you make an expression of interest, you put an expression of interest in. If you're successful, they come back and say, yep, you've been successful. Now go ahead and make a full stage application, a second stage application. In this instance, they're not doing that. You've got to make a whole application. If you are successful at the expression of interest, they will notify you via RPW online and almost ask the question, do you want us to read your second half of your application? Of course, the answer is going to be yes, hopefully. And then they will do. But, in theory, you could do all this work and they would only ever read the second stage. And if you're unsuccessful, they may never read the second stage of your application or any of the supporting documents like your business plan, your financial plan, all those other things behind it, which is really frustrating because probably it's 20% of the work to do the expression of interest and 80% of the work to do the full application. Frustrating is where we are. We just have to push on and adhere to the rules and try to suggest that this perhaps isn't the best idea in the future to try to change it. Application deadline is the 10th of March, so just over a month's time. Your contract project, the contract for the project needs to be a maximum of 12 months. So you want to be completing your project within 12 months of the award date, if that makes sense. And you'll be notified via RPW online if you're successful each stage. So again, you've got to respond to that. I think you get 30 days from them offering you the chance for you to move on to the second stage. Do make sure you keep checking RPW online, because if you miss that deadline, you may just make yourself ineligible just through inactivity. I think you've got an RPW online. I think you can ask that you get an email notification when you get a message in there, because it's very confusing. It's another thing you need to check every day to see if you've got messages. But I would just put a diary note in your on your calendars. Once a week, check RPW online to see if I've got an update on my grant application progress. Yeah, as you go through. Okay, the total grant for this window budget is £1 million, so there's £1 million in the pot. Okay, the maximum grant anybody can have is £50,000. The minimum grant is £3,000, and it's a 40% investment rate, intervention rate. So effectively, if you have a project that's worth £100,000, excluding VAT, then you would be eligible for £40,000. In other words, 40% of £100,000. And you would then have to prove that you've got the £60,000 worth of match funding in place to make the total project cost of £100,000. In real figures, that means to get the minimum grant of £3,000, you need to have a project of £7,500, and to hit the maximum grant level of £50,000, you need to be spending £125,000 or more. You can spend more, but you will only be able to get £50,000 worth of of grants, effectively. Yeah, one thing grants always say is that they will always look to offer you the minimum amount they deem necessary for you to be pushing ahead with the business. You know, most grants say they're funders of last resort. In other words, if you can afford to do it without them, you shouldn't be asking for the grants. So just be mindful if you are putting financial plans through. If you've got £1 million in the bank and you're asking for £3,000 worth of the grant, you know, you've got to probably demonstrate why you need that £1 million in the bank. And it's really important for working capital and for other investments, whatever it may be. So it's fine to have money in the bank, but you know, really think about why justifying, if there is a lot there, why you need that as working capital as an ongoing basis. Likewise, if you're going to fund your project out of your existing finances, so your cash at bank, etc., and aren't going to approach a bank, they may say, well, wouldn't the bank help you with this? And if they deem that you haven't asked the bank whether they can help or not, they may say, well, I think you should ask the bank before you come to us first, because if they will give you the money, in theory, you're not eligible. Okay, so just be mindful of these things when making an application and proving your match funding. You know, even saying we've spoken with the bank and they've said, you know, they wouldn't entertain consensual lending at this point. You know, that's fine. They may ask you to prove it, but you don't need to have bank funding as match funding. But just knowing what grant officers have come back with in the past, I'm just trying to give you some benefits of my previous learning.
Dave, sorry,
yes.
Another 2 questions come in regarding the project timeline. Patricia's asking, with a produce that takes longer than 12 months to grow, how do we apply for a 12-month project? Okay, the project, in my view, and my interpretation of the project is how long it takes you to develop the project. So if you are looking to buy something, does that take more than 12 months to put in place? So if it's new, a new irrigation system, for instance, then if that is put in place in 6 months, then the fact that your produce isn't going to come to fruition for another 5 years shouldn't make a difference. Your project, the capital development project, is within the year. There is a nuance later on when they ask about increasing profit. They ask for what your increase in profit will be in a 3-year period. Now that is really a real issue, and to be fair, I've already asked this question to the grant body myself and haven't had an answer back. And I've spoken to somebody else about this grant, and they know who they are probably. I have asked the question, I haven't had an answer back. You know, their project is going to take more than 3 years. Their produce is going to take more than 3 years to come to a viable economic maturity. Okay. There is a question later on that says, what's your increase in profit after 3 years? And they use that as part of the scoring criteria. So we need to know whether that is set in stone, or whether if there is a reason to extend that period, because horticulture is different to other sort of food processing or other grants they run. Then we need to know whether that would be acceptable to draw that benchmark after 4 or 5 years. Okay, so I will. Whoever's got the names and addresses of people who's running this webinar, if I get answers to some of these questions, I will try to ping them around to everybody, if that's okay. Does that answer the question? If I carry on, if you can just say yes or no in a second. Yeah. So who can apply? Well, but there's 2 things. There's 2 sort of criteria for applying. One is you're registered with RPW Online. You can't do anything. You've got to make the application on RPW Online. So you need to make sure you're registered with them. If you're not registered with them, I'm going to be sending around everybody a big long list of documents. Okay, one of them is around registering for RPW Online if you're not already registered with them. Okay, but you need to do that because you can't make an application without it. Okay, and secondly, you need to be an existing producer of commercial horticultural crops, which comes back to this previous question. So basically, you need to prove this as well. So you're required to provide evidence that you're a producer of commercial horticultural crops, of which we have already mentioned: edible fruits, vegetables. I'm sure there should be a comma there: ornamental plants, flowers, and tree nurseries. Okay. So you need to be thinking about what evidence of these. And notice every one of these is and/or. You know, if it could be and, fantastic. Evidence with your within your
trading accounts clearly showing sales of horticultural produce. So if maybe you sell more than one produce type. So if your accounts sort of say animal farming and horticulture are separate things, or dairy and horticulture are separate things, then fine. They may not do, but you may have trading accounts, or you may have some management accounts that you do have different nominal codes for different revenue types. So if you can prove that, fantastic. If not, copies of appropriate invoices, receipts for the produce. In other words, if you produce apples and you've sold apples to the local farmers market or farm shop, and you've got an invoice showing that, fine. Evidence you have grown and harvested a commercial horticultural crop which has been stored or processed prior to sale. In other words, you've grown it, but you haven't had a chance to sell it yet. So this is an example of if you're growing something, but you haven't actually managed to turn it into a commercial crop as yet. So yeah, you're planted a vineyard, but you haven't got a viable crop come as yet. Yeah, so this not yet matured. Also, you've produced it and stored it, but not yet sold it, or you're in the process of producing it. So any one of those things. But ideally, if you're already up and running and you're already selling, then I would get a couple of invoices just to prove that you are a horticultural business, effectively. And you can upload that onto the RPW online when you make the application. And I'm not going to ping past this. If you are a group, then you are eligible. So you can have a number of you coming together. So I don't know if a number of you work in the horticultural cluster group potentially. If there was something you want to do together, that's fine. But you would actually have to have your own individual customer reference number for the group and be effectively registered on RPW online with that different CRN number. Okay. And then planning permission and sustainable draining systems. Again, I don't want to go into this too much because I could spend an hour and a half talking about just this. But effectively, if you need to have any official approvals, so planning permissions or sustainable drainage system approvals, you will need to have those in place before you can draw down any grant. It's the terms they use. So it sounds like you don't necessarily have to have them at application, but you won't be able to draw down any grants until they are in place, and they'll want to see proof of that. So they want to see planning permissions, etc., before you can do that. Okay. And then project examples, and this is quite. I'll leave this up just for a minute or so people can have a read through. I'm not going to read them all out, but these are examples of eligible capital costs that you can spend money on. It's not a definitive list, but it's a good indication of the kind of things that you can spend money on. I'll just leave that up there for it.
Whilst people are looking at that, Dave, there's a question coming. Do we have to be growing over 2 hectares? Is there any guidance stipulation? I haven't seen anything that mentions any size of farming there at all. No, I haven't seen. I will double check and try to come back to you. And again, going back to asking the grant officers, I don't want to deflect every question, but I have not seen anything within the guidance notes that mentions size of farm.
I would agree, David, and I think the fact that they've included vertical farming in there.
Exactly. Yeah. Well done. Yeah. No. So no, I wouldn't worry about that. Okay, I am going to be sharing all these with people afterwards. But hopefully that's given people a chance to read probably about 20 odd bullet points. And then ineligible costs. Now this is quite interesting sometimes. I was asked previously about, are we able to replace existing infrastructure? As far as I'm concerned, it says you can't replace items previously purchased with EU or Welsh Government grant assistance, and you can't replace items under an insurance claim that are subject to an insurance claim, but I can't see anything that says you can't replace out of date things other than that. So if that's hopefully preempting one question. I think the thing to note here is this is a horticultural grant. It's not a food processing grant. So you'll notice that packaging and processing equipment isn't eligible, nor is sort of refurbishment of buildings, etc. if you are looking for a grant that's going to help you with your packing and processing of your produce, etc., there is another grant out at the moment called FBAS, which is Food Business Accelerator Scheme, okay, which is another 40% grant intervention, and you would be eligible for that potentially for those items. I see no reason, I personally don't see any reason why you potentially couldn't be making applications to both grants, if you're, as long as you're asking for different items. You know, you can't go for 2 grants for the same item, but if there's different, if you know there's 2 different projects, one being I need to work on my irrigation, or I need polytunnels, or whatever it may be, or vertical farming. But then if you, for the horticulture grant, and then I need packing, processing, or I need to buy a jam kettle to turn my lovely orchard into jam, you know, that would be an FBAS grant application. So again, I don't know if there's any questions that have come from that at all, Wayne. If not, I'll move on again. Okay, if in doubt, this is this magic email address I've been mentioning. So if there's any doubt at all, I would drop an email to these guys and ask the question directly. They are normally quite responsive, although they haven't come back from, to be fair, they haven't come back about 3 days on my previous question. But you know, ask the question. So ask me. I'm more than happy for people to ping me an email and ask me a question. But you know, if you want it straight from the horse's mouth, then ask those guys. Yeah. Okay, so the questions. So there are effectively 2 stages. So there's expression of interest, as I mentioned, and the second stage application, or the full application. Although we have to make answer all the questions now, I'm still going to deal with the expression of interest and the full application questions separately, because they have different scoring criteria for one. So there are 4 expression of interest questions. So these are the first 4 questions that they're going to read. And if you're unsuccessful, the only 4 questions they're going to read. So they are strategic fit, suitability of investment, long-term sustainability, and value for money. And each question is scored from 0 to 4, and they have different weighting factors. So basically, if you score a 4 for strategic fit, they times that by 4 to give you 16 points. So 4 times 4 is 16. If you on suitability of investment, it's got a weighting factor of 5. So basically, they times that by 5. So your 4 times 5 is 20, etc. I've just proved I could do my 4 times table, which I'm really, really proud of. So in essence, suitability of investment is what they think is the most important, followed by strategic fit, value for money, and long-term sustainability. Doesn't mean we don't try to get a maximum four in each, but if you think you can't hit suitability of investment, or you're going to get a low score on that, then that's going to be most damning. You need to get a combination of 30 between that. So 4 times 4 will be 16. You know, 4 times 5 will be 20. So if you hit both of those 2, you'll get it in just those first 2 questions alone. If you score a 1 or a 0 in any of these, then you are ineligible. Okay, so you need to be getting at least a 0, a 2, 3, or 4 in each of these questions to even stand a chance. Okay. And then the second stage application. So if you're successful in the first stage, then you'll be invited to the full application. Like I say, they invite you through RPW online. While they don't just assume that if you've gone through the hassle of making a second stage application, you're okay for them to read it. Don't know, but you have to physically give them permission to. And then there are these sections there. So there are delivery, project delivery, a risk and management question, project management, cross-cutting themes, indicators and outcomes, and finance and compliance. I will go through each of these in more detail in a second. So for the second stage application, I'll go through the scoring of the first stage application, the expression of interest questions as we go through them. But effectively, the second stage applications, they score high, medium, and low. Again, I've asked a question, is there any specific sort of parameters that makes a high question, a medium, or a low question for each of the different questions? And the answer is almost no. It's just a robust and detailed response, which is completely unhelpful. But there you go, it's where we are. And basically, you need to be hitting medium across all categories. So you want to be at least hitting the applicant has provided satisfactory and detailed responses against most of the evidence requirements. Okay, ideally you want to be providing robust and detailed responses against all of them, but we could accept this if need be. What we can't have is incomplete or insufficient responses, because you will not get the grant. Even if you get through the expression of interest, you won't get the grant. Okay. And then there are a number of supporting documents you need to upload by the 10th of May as well. So you've got the online application form, which is what we're going to go through in a second, but there's also a business plan that needs to be completed. You need 3 years accounts if you've been trading for 3 years, and if not, but basically for the period you have been trading, a 3-year financial projection, evidence of match funding. So this is, on that example of £100,000 project, £40,000 grant, this is a £60,000 your contribution part of it. That could be a bank loan, overdraft, your own funding, whatever it may be. Procurement, so quotes for items that you're looking to buy, and that is 1 quote for anything under £5,000, 3 quotes for anything over £5,000. Evidence that you're an existing producer of commercial horticultural crops, which is an example of showing invoice, showing that you've sold things to people in the past, and any planning or sustainable drainage systems approvals requirements. Okay, so you need to be showing all that by the 10th of March, which sounds an awful lot, but take it one step at a time. Don't try to look at everything in one go, otherwise your head will explode and you won't end up making an application. If you take it one step at a time, then it's not too daunting. One question at a time. And just some summary. I'm going to come back to the summary things. I'm going to start going through it. Sorry, I'm going to have to stop sharing and then reshare my screen if that's okay with everybody. I couldn't work out to just get a okay, hopefully somebody can give me a thumbs up if the screen says question 1, strategic fit.
Yeah, all good, Dave.
Perfect. So the first question is the strategic fit question. Okay, so what I've done is there are lots of other guidance notes, etc. And what I've tried to do, well, there's basically five guidance notes documents. I'm just looking at them now. We've got a 40-odd page one, 2 40-odd page ones, a 30-odd page one, a 9-page one, and a 5-page one. So what I've tried to do, and by the way, the online portal also gives some guidance as well. So what I've tried to do is bring it all into one little Word document. This is a Word document. It's like a normal Word document. And I often do this for any grants I end up doing. I end up producing one of these, which basically has all the guidance notes at the top, and then I give myself a little, this is where I write my answer. Yeah, so I can, and I'll explain what all these numbers and what everything else means in a second. So I actually write my answer down below here, which then means I've got all the guidance notes, right, scoring criteria, all to hand to make sure that I really am answering the question. And you'll remember when you were at school, your teacher told you to answer the question. Nothing's changed in life. Grant applications are all about answering the question. Grant officers don't necessarily care what you do, you care what you do for their outputs. Okay, so I call it weeing on the grant officers. If you say we do this, we do that, we do the other, that's wonderful, but if it's not adhering to what the grant officers want you to do, then you're not going to get any points for it. And it might be fantastic, but you're not going to get the grant. So we need to understand, and I try to amalgamate all these different guidance notes in one place, so you don't have to be cross-referring to lots of different documents. And then I've put some hints and tips in to which questions they relate to. So in the strategic fit, actually, I'll tell you one thing that'd be more useful probably to do first. I'm going to stop sharing for a second, and I'm going to show you the RPW online portal to show you how this all fits together. Okay. So can you see the screen now? So when you log into RPW Online, your screen will hopefully look a bit like this. You can scan down and you can see there's the Horticultural Development Scheme form, and we can click on it and it will log me out because I've been timed out. Hopefully it logs me back in again. View. Horticultural Development Grant Scheme form. Okay, and so this is the application form. So there is lots of gumph at the start of it, which you will absolutely read. We're going to click continue at the moment. Bear with me. I'm just going to click continue again. Actually, no, I can do it here. Okay, so you'll notice that there is the instruction letter, privacy notice. There is some detailed business organisation status. So you need to go through and say, okay, well, I'm a limited company, and do I trade under a different name? No, I trade under the same name, etc., etc. Okay, so you don't have to be a limited company. You can be any of these kind of companies. So pretty much, I can't think of any company that you can't be to get this. In theory, company number, VAT numbers, etc. So basic questions that start with an application form. Okay, your project overview is then you've got to give your project a name, be inventive, be exciting, or just sort of just do what it says on the tin, whichever way. Project description. So you've got 500. Now these things here are characters, not words. Okay, so that's 500 characters that you've got to describe your project. Okay, it's not marked. They sometimes say this is what they publicise. If they give you the grant and they publicise that they've given grants out, this might be the thing that they use to say this is your project. Okay, so just be mindful that write stuff that describes what you're going to do really well, but that you don't mind potentially being shared at a later date. Project postcode and location, and your start and end date. Okay, so nice. Again, nothing too groundbreaking then. Okay, the groundbreaking bit comes with the business project plan. Okay, so all these different questions that I mentioned: strategic fit, suitability of investment, long-term sustainability, value for money, project delivery, risk management. These are all the things that I mentioned previously. These ones, these first four, are the expression of interest. These other ones below there are the second stage application questions. Okay, so if I click into strategic fit, which is where I am, you'll notice that there is a box here that's got 1 of 4,000 characters in there. So if I start typing, you'll notice that type 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, there are 5 characters there. It does include spaces, so I'll put a space in between each, then it does become 10 spaces. Okay, so just be mindful of that. There are tips, hints and tips when there's word counts for things. Putting hyphens in between words, joining them together is great. Slashes, so if you've got a list, put item 1 / item 2, item 3, etc., and it joins it all as one big word. They're all fantastic where there's word counts. This isn't word count, it's character count. So these strategies aren't useful here. They might be useful for you in other grants in the future, or tender applications, or whatever else you want to make. Okay, so basically you go through, you type in your answer into there. Hopefully it makes a lot more sense than that. And you'll notice that some of these questions have more than one question. Okay, which you wouldn't know from reading the guidance notes. Okay, or the simplified guidance notes. So again, you put another question, answer. You put another question, answer, and you can see as you go here, you are counting down your answer as you go. Just be mindful if you do something on Word, and I often suggest that you type out your answers in Word first and then paste them in. There may be some discrepancies on what Word sees as a space and what this portal sees as a space. Okay. Also, just for reference, if I try to put an and in there, you'll notice that it's an invalid character. It doesn't like ands. Doesn't like dollars. Yeah. So it doesn't like stars. Okay. So if you've got an application, if you're doing this on Word first and then pasting it in, and you've got these characters, it's not going to let you. It will let you enter it, and it will either take the decision for you of deleting it or tell you that you can't have them. Okay, so just be mindful of that when you're doing stuff. One real issue is if you've got bullet points in your answer and you paste them in, sometimes it will have a bullet point. It might put a couple of spaces before the bullet point, a couple of spaces after the bullet point, and the bullet points. All of a sudden, you've used sort of maybe 5 to 10 characters, just put one bullet point in. Okay, so just think about writing this. A dash, space, and then start writing your answer is a better way. It looks awful on Word, but it's a better way of pasting it into here. Also, you can't bold anything. If I try to bold that, I can't. Okay, so again, if I'm putting titles in my answer, I suggest you use caps locks as the thing, just to make it look better and nicer. Okay, and then all of a sudden you are sort of starting to break up your document and make it slightly aesthetically pleasing. Okay, so each of these has got its own area, and you literally just move through, and as you move through, you can move through, or you can click save and next, and you move through onto the next question. Okay, and when you come to exit, never use the back button on the browser. One, it's probably going to crash it for you, and probably two, it's probably going to lock you out of it for probably an hour or so, because it won't let you back in because it thinks you're still in there even though you're not. Okay, so put a bit of masking tape over the corner of your screen, whatever. Don't do it. Use the previous next, click through this menu, and when you're finished, just click exit, and that will take you back to the main RPW Online screen again. Okay. The really frustrating thing is if you have left it to the last second, which obviously you're not going to do, you're all going to be getting this in way before the final deadline. But if you are approaching midnight on the 10th of March and you lock yourself out of RPW Online for an hour, then trust me, the air is going to go blue. In my experience. So, okay, let's have a look at the questions. Go back to where we were. Okay, are we back to question one, strategic fit, EOI?
Yeah, Dave, just a quick one on that.
Yeah.
The guidance asks, there's a question come in, the guidance note asks for backing up information. So how do they attach it to where you're just filling out the RPW? How do you attach the evidence? Great
question. I was gonna do it, but I'll do it now. Can you see the RPW Online again?
Yeah.
Okay. Amazingly, you have to paste it as a message. Okay. Now, when you go through the Horticultural Development Scheme grant, there's a final button. It's a submit button. Okay. I think it does give you, well, previous grants have given you the option to navigate to the messages section effectively, and you're able to upload evidence there. But effectively, if you don't and you come out of it, literally you click into messages, create a message, and my title of the message is supporting, if I can spell, supporting docs for Horticultural Development Scheme. Okay, you would probably write it in front. The message is please find attach invoice proving I'm a horticultural business. Attach a file to it, and we're on. Yeah. And then save it, and then go on to the next one. I'm not going to do this because then I'm going to get a very strange query come back from RPW Online saying, "Well, I don't understand what you mean, David." So I'm just going to cancel that for the moment. But basically that's the way that you upload them. Now, in theory, you could do it in a zip folder. You could zip everything together and say, these are all my supporting documents for my horticultural development grant. I don't see any reason why you can't do that, because bearing in mind you're going to have a business plan, a financial plan, etc. I want to click. See, this is where it's a nightmare. I want to click back, but I know I mustn't use that button, so I'm going to click that. So Yeah, zip folder. I see no reason why you can't do that. And all my supporting document, and then in that you can put your business plan, your financial plan, your invoices proving your horticultural grant, your accounts, and anything else you might think. Less of support if you think that I want to try to provide some other evidence that what I'm doing is really, really good. Okay, so that is. I hope that answers the question. So strategic fit question. So the first expression of interest question. So basically, this grant has a strategic overview, okay, and that is effectively the strategic aims and objectives of this scheme are support existing commercial or horticultural producers to develop their business through investment in new equipment and technology that offers clear and quantifiable benefits to the horticultural enterprise. So these are the 4 bullets that they are wanting you to adhere to, okay? And so the questions start relating to those. So if we look at the questions quickly down below, and it's not quite asked in this way, but what I've tried to do is split. The original question was describe the project and explain why the investment is required by the business. Full stop, where appropriate, provide diagrams. What I've tried to do is there's 2 different things they're asking there within that one sentence. So originally it was literally just. That was the question. And what I've tried to do is break it up so we can make sure that we answer everything that they asked for. Because bearing in mind, on the scoring criteria, they mentioned about answering everything they asked for and most of what they asked for. So we're going to make sure we answer everything they asked for. So by breaking it down in this way, I know that I've got to describe the project and I've got to explain why the investment is required by the business. Or, if appropriate, can I provide any diagrams, images, photographs to assist in explaining the project? Okay, so again, photographs and things like that can massively help, and especially if you're trying to describe something complicated, it saves you word count, doesn't it, or character count in this case. Okay, so that's question 1A. Okay, so that's the first question of strategic fit. Okay, question 2 is explain how the proposed investment will contribute to the strategic aims and objectives of the scheme. Well, that's that blue box above. So effectively, I said try to set a bullet heading for each of these bullets. So can you suggest why you're adhering to it for the first bullet? Can you suggest then why you're adhering to it for the second bullet, the third bullet, the fourth bullet, etc. So don't just read the first one and just write and ignore the rest. So enable horticultural producers to enter new markets. So, are you putting vertical farming in, and all of a sudden you've got a year-round produce now, which means you can approach customers you perhaps you couldn't approach before. Is there improved quality because you've got new disease mitigation, things in place, whatever it may be, try to tick each one. You're never going to be able to say something for everything, but as far as possible, try to think about it. So again, set it as a heading, obviously shorten it in your brain. Don't put a 2-line heading down, and then try to write something underneath it for that. And then the third question is describe to what extent your existing activity and or investment embrace innovative equipment and techniques, or detail how the investment will enable you to introduce innovative techniques in the future, or both. There's no reason why something can't be innovative now, and it sets the foundations for something innovative in the future. It could be a phase 1 that leads to phase 2. Say it, okay? And you'll notice that above here, so these are basically the guidance notes. I've tried to suggest where the guidance notes fit into those answers below. So question 1B is the question 1B. Yeah. So when I'm looking at the guidance notes and I'm reading, it says, for a project to meet the strategic fit, applicants need to demonstrate how the proposed investment will contribute to the strategic aims and objectives of the scheme. I know that bit really is a question 1B section. And demonstrate why investment is probably a question 1A2 part, which is question 1. A2, explain why the investment is required by the business. Okay, so by doing this, we're going through the guidance notes and we're making sure that everywhere we are going to put an answer to their guidance notes. So this paragraph here basically is question 1C, because it's all about innovation and innovative techniques. And then the final bit, applicants can demonstrate the clear links between investment and increased productivity and turnover, who have detailed how the investment priority was established. So you're going to be doing this anyway. It's interesting to note who have detailed how the investment priority was established. So I think, almost we are doing this because we have identified a need within the business. Now that could be a need that if we don't do this, then we're not going to, the produce is going to be damaged, or we've seen that there is something really, really, we've identified a new niche in the business, in the marketplace that we can exploit by developing this. Okay, so I think this idea of why you're doing it, rather than just a case of, well, we thought it was probably quite a good idea, I'll sort of give some thought as to why you think it's a good idea. Okay. And then the scoring criteria are, so, and pretty much the scoring criteria are the same for most of them in their essence. So to get a score of 4, bear in mind we're on after a score of 4 for everything, aren't we? A clear explanation is given, including evidence of how the anticipated investments response to the scheme objectives results in significant improvements in the technical and financial performance of the business. Innovative technology and techniques are embraced. Basically, I've highlighted one section of that, including evidence. Okay, and it's only Wayne on here today, but anybody who's ever been on one of my webinars before knows that I bang on about tangible evidence all the time. Throwing out empty statements isn't good enough. And I'm going to show you an example now of what I mean by that. If I can go back to my PowerPoint. Okay, importance of tangible evidence. Okay, each one of these bullets, each one of these first bullets, ignore the last one for the second, say exactly the same thing. Okay, so a previous grant basically said you need to increase your turnover by 30%, and if you increase your turnover by 30%, you get the top mark. Okay, so we're thinking, well, we just need to say that we are going to increase our turnover by 30%. So, through investment in new machinery, we'll increase our turnover by 30%. Full stop. Question. Move on to the next question. We've answered that one. But have you provided any kind of tangible evidence that you've done this, or have you just thrown a statement into the ether and expect people to believe you? We've done the first one. second one, sorry. So a better answer than that is our existing turnover is £100,000 and the new production line will generate an additional £30,000. Brilliant. Where you've now explained, hence we're going to increase our turnover by 30%, where you're starting to explain it now, because you've said what your existing turnover is, etc. Good, but I would suggest still not going to get your top marks. Next sort of one is our existing turnover is £100,000 and the new production line will generate additional £30,000, exactly the same as above. But we build on that. The additional turnover is based on 3,000 sales of £10. So all of a sudden we're now starting to say, look, an average sale for us is £10, and we think we're going to make an extra 3,000 sales. Okay, but they may say, well, who to? And is that average, or is that between £1 and £20? So we can put we can add on this part of the sentence. The average purchase forecasted per client is 300 sales per year, and we are forecasting 10 new clients within 3 years. Okay, so all of a sudden now you're saying, well, we said 3,000 sales. We now know that is based on 10 new clients of 300 sales each. And if we get those at £10 each, that gives our £30,000, 30%, happy days. And then we can say, but you still haven't provided any evidence. You're saying how you're explaining how you've done it. You're not really saying exactly that you've spoken to people, etc. So the next add-on to that is we've already spoken to 10 existing clients that have already purchased our existing products and are expressing interest in our new lines. So this is sort of an example where you might be adding on sort of new product lines. We have letters of support from each of these, and they are uploaded as supporting evidence. So not only are you saying that we know exactly who our customers are going to be, we've got letters of support from them. We know what an average sale per customer is, per product is, etc. You're really starting to put some evidence on the bones there. So this sort of penultimate bullet point is exactly the same as the first bullet point, just with much greater tangible evidence. And you can apply this to every single question you answer. You know, my solar panels are going to reduce climate change. Yeah, probably will. How many tons of carbon are they locking down a year? You know, what cost savings are there? What kilowatt hours are you not having to now have to buy from coal-fired power stations, etc. Okay, how do we know this? Because I've had a quote from the solar power people who have done a site survey that have said on that field with that angle of orientation, I should get so much amount of sunlight per year. You're proving it, aren't you? Rather than just saying solar panels, climate change, happy days. Okay, so and then this final point, because I actually didn't write the answer for somebody, but I did help them get it overturned. They basically did a better job than this. They basically went to the ins and outs of everything, and they came back with a score of 0 because the grant officer said you said you could produce the goods, but there was nothing in there that said you could source the ingredients for it. This is a food grant, you know. So so they focused so much on the customers, they didn't focus on the supply chain. So again, I've added here, we've spoken to our existing suppliers and they have the capacity to supply the raw ingredients necessary for growth. So for you, this might be, because you are potentially the raw ingredients, it might be, we've spoken with the equipment producers, you know, and they can get the equipment in the timescale that we say that we need it here. Or if there are other things that do need to go into your production or your supply chain, you know, you've spoken with them, and and that's fine as well. And I've added, nobody's ever said this, but I've also added the other side of the supply chain. We've also spoken to our distribution agents, and they've stated they have the capacity to make the additional deliveries, just in case we ever got something that comes back the other side of it as well. Okay, so you're giving the grant officer no excuse but to give you a top mark, you know, the whole way through. Okay, does that make sense to people? So just think tangible. Whenever you do, if you make a statement, can I prove it? Can I go one step further? Okay. Let me just jump back to my
just talking about the grant officers there, Dave.
Yeah.
A question's come in. Is it correct in saying that the grant officers can be contacted by phone as well as email?
If you're lucky. I've scoured everything, and I have not managed to find the telephone number for the horticultural grant team. I could be wrong. There are lots of phone numbers. If you want to make a complaint, or you want to go to ombudsman, if you can say the word, etc. But I couldn't see a phone number for them directly. Only that email address. Like I said, they have been reasonably responsive. And one of my top tips for grants is to ring the grant officer and get a personal relationship with them. So trust me, I've looked, but I haven't found it yet. If I do find it, or I ask, can I speak to somebody about this? Then I get that telephone number, I will share it with you if appropriate, if they give me permission to. So at the moment, no. I'm happy for somebody to prove me wrong, and find that. That's all. Sorry. So tangible evidence, and you'll notice on all the scoring criteria, I'm not going to go through all the scoring criteria because they basically say give a clear explanation, including evidence of how, and then you adhere to what they've said in the guidance notes above, effectively. Okay, so I have put it on each question because it just reminds you, if you keep seeing the word highlighted, including evidence, you know, and then it might sink in. So that's strategic fit question. The second question is suitability of investment, and this is all about the environment. Why suitability of investment is all about the environment, and why they don't just say it's an environmental question, pass, but this is what they say. They do spuriously mention the well-being economy, which suggests that it might be linked to the well-being of Future Generations Act, which is not just environment, but it's all about health and well-being of employees, etc. But there is sort of another question in relation to that. So as far as I can tell, this question is all about the impacts on the environment and climate change. Okay, so this is their guidance notes. So basically they say, for a project to meet these criteria, applicants are required to demonstrate how their plans impact on the environment and what effect they will have on climate change. Now, I think those two are two different things. You know, your environment could be your soil or water health, couldn't it? And your environment might be air quality. Okay, so you know, I'll treat them as two separate things, and they specifically say applications demonstrating the investment results in improvements in water, soil and air quality will receive a higher score than those that do not. They're giving you a hint there, aren't they? Answer the question. We need to be explaining why what you're doing improves water, soil, ideally, and but at the very least, or air quality. Okay, get creative. I'm sure most of you can do that. And if anybody's got, I'd love to speak to people individually about this because we could button down some good examples for each of these quite quickly. And then also applicants will need to show commitment to efficient use of nutrients and reducing emissions and enhancing the farm ecosystem. Okay, your score again is basically you do all the above, including evidence. So anything tangible we can mention here. You know, so if you're improving air quality, like I said about the solar panels, how many tons of carbon are you locking down by having solar panels? How many gallons or litres of water are you saving by putting rainwater harvesting in or irrigation systems, effective irrigation systems in, by reusing, by composting and reusing as mulch? You know, all these kind of things, you know, are going to be ticking the boxes here. And if you look at the questions below, there are basically two questions. So describe how the investment will support the business business to grow crops sustainably and enhance water, soil and air quality. Well, that's A and B, 1, 2 and 3 above. If you look above in my guidance notes, we've got A and B, 1, 2 and 3. So that's where you answer that, isn't it? And then the second question is describe how the investment will enable the business to become more efficient in the use of nutrients, reduce emissions and enhance the farm ecosystems. So again, those are those 3 points I mentioned above. I think those ones are quite self-explanatory. Just this tangible evidence, you know, even on these, you know, more efficient in the use of nutrients. How much? What are you saving? Reducing emissions. How much? Enhance the farm ecosystem. You know, again, give examples of how that is going to happen. Tangible figures and drop names if there's names or techniques, whatever you can use. Drop the names. Just like if you're just going to sell to new customers and you've got a letter of support from Harrods, mention them. You know, in your grant application. It shows tangibility. It shows you haven't just said we're going to get new customers. It's shown who those new customers are going to be, whether that's Harrods or your local farm shop. Long-term sustainability is the third question. So products that aim to deliver, this is all about increasing job opportunities. So this is creation of jobs. There's also safeguarding of existing jobs, and also then, how what you're doing can be a catalyst for further investments. So because you're growing more, maybe you need more packaging, but you're going to look to do something different with the packaging. Although you can't get funding for packaging from this grant, because you are increase your quality or quantity or different types of product, you may need to have investments in packaging equipment outside this grant, or you may have different customers you can now hit because of something you're doing differently, or you're going to market. You know, there's marketing opportunities because of what you're doing is different. So these are things that perhaps aren't being supported by the grant, but are byproducts of, or the grant is a catalyst for. And then, is this the first part of a phase development? If it is, you know, this is phase 1. Phase 2 is the next step would ask them for money for that for now, but this is, we need to have this phase in place before we can go to phase 2. So again, all these are got to be answered within these questions, this long-term sustainability question. Okay, and you'll notice the question says, what impact will the investment have on the long-term sustainability of the business, and describe how the investment may encourage further investment in the business. Okay, so if you were to read that question alone, you may not realize that you need to be talking about job opportunities. Yeah, so what job opportunities am I going to create? New jobs, and how is this going to safeguard jobs? Okay, you may get these ones, but even then possibly not. So this is really giving you a massive steer as to what to say within a quite superficial question. Okay, because the scoring criteria is linked to this. Okay, to these elements here. So if you tick off each one of these, then you will have a fantastic answer, and no doubt, because you're going to give tangible evidence, not just going to mention things, you're going to actually give evidence to them as well. You're going to get a score of 4 for this question. Okay, and again, I would use this document. I would start writing my answer here. If you start writing my answer here like this, then once I've got it, I could highlight it. I could review it, click word count, and you can see that I know that now is 76 characters with spaces. I've got 4,000 characters, so I've still got another, I'm not going to say the number, 3,924, I think, characters to go. Okay, so, and just on that, 4,000 characters, if you work on the basis, if you're using Calibri font size 11, for instance, a full page of writing is roughly between 3,000 and 3,500 words, probably. If you put lots of bullet points in, then it's probably going to be less. If you increase the font size, then obviously it's going to be less. And if you don't have any punctuation or paragraphs, it's obviously going to be less. But just to give you an idea, if you think about writing between 1 and 1.5 pages of writing per 4,000 characters question, then you're not going to be far off. Just because it's got 4 characters doesn't mean you have to write 4 characters. If you said everything you can say within 200 characters, or 200, you haven't gone far enough. 2,000 characters, then you may well have answered the question. If you can't say anything else, then don't just invent things, because it seems like they've given 4,000 characters to every single question, apart from 3 of them, which to me actually could have done a bit more. But there you go, and I'll go through those in a second. Then we've got value for money. Sorry. Okay, so this is an important question, this one, because this is a bit of science. So a lot of the questions so far have been a bit of art to them. You've got a bit of free reign of my term, please give tangible evidence, could be interpreted in many different ways. There is no way of misinterpreting this question, because basically it says it's going to give you a score of maximum score if you take your increase in profit and divide it by the amount of grant you're asking for, it gives you a figure. So up here, if we have a project that is increasing its profit by £100,000 within 3 years of completion of the project, and you're requesting a grant of £20,000, then basically you take £100,000 divided by 20,000, which gives you a score of 5. If you look down here, because you've got a score of over 1.6, you get a score of 4. Yeah. If you had a project and you're going to increase your profit by £50,000, and you're asking for a grant of £40,000, then basically 50,000 divided by 40,000 is only 1.25. So you're going to be within this category, aren't you? So you're going to get a score of 3. Disappointing, but probably not terminal. Okay.
And is that gross or net profit, Dave?
Doesn't state either. So I would almost state both. I would love it to be net profit if you could get net profit there. But I would state both. Say that based on gross profit, it's £100,000 and £20,000, and our net profit is our gross profit is £50,000, which gives us a score of 2 and our divide by 20. I would use both. I would try to get the net profit above if possible, and it's really, really difficult. There is sometimes a benefit for net profit. You might be doing other things within your business that is growing your business as well as what you're asking for grant for. So you may be a horticultural business, but you may also do other things as well. So for instance, if you are a wine producer, then you may think, okay, I need to do this to make more money, but realistically, I'm not going to make any money in the short term. But actually, my crop I planted 4 years ago is really coming to maturity now, and I'm going to suddenly make a massive amount of profit. Then using your net profit sort of suggests that you're going to get a lot more. Now, although it's not linked to the project, you know, I would potentially use that figure. I think if you're going to use gross profit, it's got to be linked to your project only. So in other words, you can't be claiming gross profit for other parts of the business. Whereas if you work on that net profit, you possibly could do. So if you can get your net profit above 1.6, you know, that is going to be your lowest figure in theory. I would do it. If you can't, play the gross profit line again. I will ask the question to the grant officer though, again, and try to get a definitive answer on that. That's okay.
Yeah, Helen's also asking, Dave, whilst we're on that part, is it the increase at the end of year 3, or is it the combined increase in turnovers from 1, 2, and 3? Okay,
I've answered that question before, and I got I'm going to ask the question again because I wasn't happy with the answer I got. But interpreting what they said, it is the year 3 total. It's not a cumulative figure of year 1, 2, and 3 together. It is what you're going to do. If you've got a set of accounts for year 3, what is the increase in profit for that year compared to year 0, if you like, the year before you started or the project? Okay. Again, I will ask that question again because you know, when you get a niggling doubt that you're not really convinced that the grant officer understood what you're asking, I just had that slight niggle. And I probably shouldn't, this is being recorded, so I probably shouldn't say this. I do have the mantra, if you assume the grant officer's an idiot, sometimes you're right. Okay, so, you know, if you do ask a question, you don't think they've got it, yeah, probably do re-ask that question. Or if you think you don't assume that they're going to read between the lines and draw conclusions on your for you, you know, spell it out in plain English, which is why I suggest trying to break down their questions into headings, you know, or their criteria into headings at the top within your grant answers, because there's no excuse for them not to see that they've asked that, you'll put that as a heading, and now you've answered the question. You know, writing a big paragraph where you're just 2 or 3 points in one, they could lose that easily, couldn't they? So yeah, assume they're idiots. Sometimes you're right. There are some fantastically talented grant officers. I've got to say that because this is going out and recording, so that's my caveat. But there are some. I won't say anything else. Move on. Yeah, so forecasted within 3 years of completion of the project. Okay, so this is the key. And again, if you're a wine producer, just use an example of something that I understand. That could take, you know, you could plant today and it's going to take more than 3 years to come to fruition and get a viable crop out of it, you know. So I've asked, this is the question I've asked and I haven't got the answer back for, and I was desperately wanting to try to get an answer back today for this, and nudged them, but still nothing. So we need to understand whether we can extend that, because this doesn't suit the industry. You're asking a question that doesn't suit the industry that you're asking about. Okay. Now, bearing in mind, if you get a score of 1 or 0, you're out. You don't get anything. So please don't ask for a grant of £50,000 and with a £1,000 increase in profit, because you're going to get 1 or 0 and you're going to be excluded completely. Okay. So just bear that scoring criteria in mind. Okay. So this question is I may jump onto the portal in a second. So there's two sides to this. One, they ask the question about this, and then they ask you effectively to show how the total project costs have been arrived at, providing a detailed breakdown of the proposed expenditure. And then detail the forecasted impact on the financial performance of the business expected within 3 years of completion of the project. Consider the impact on turnover and profitability. Explain your assumptions. Okay, so they're really asking you to explain how you have arrived at your project cost. This is the equipment cost. So why have you chosen the equipment you've chosen, and the rationale behind what this is for, the equipment you've chosen and the business, and then what the impact that new equipment is going to have, or infrastructure is going to have on your financial performance. Now, it might be the fact that you don't increase your turnover at all. This is all about cost saving. By doing this means I save lots of money per year, and therefore my profit goes up. Because remember, profit can be increase in turnover or reduction in costs. This question isn't asking about increase in turnover. It's asking about profit, as somebody very, very elegantly asked about net and gross profit proves. Yeah. So don't just think, well, I'm increasing my turnover by a certain amount. This is profit, not turnover. But it just, like I say, it does give you the ability to reduce costs as well as increase revenue. Okay. So, you know, this is where you get the chance to really take your financial forecasting to pieces. You know, you will have done a financial forecast. So don't just do last year's turnover plus 10%. You know, it's lazy. That's what your accountants do for you. You don't want that. You want to know how many additional products. What's your pricing? Again, previously I've had issue with grant people saying you haven't mentioned your pricing. You haven't mentioned how much a product costs. So how can we assess whether you're going to increase your turnover or not? So mention your pricing, mention how many units you're intending to sell. If you can mention, you know, an average client, and you're going to take on an extra 10 clients, or by doing this, we're going to get an extra product line, and we're going to sell to existing customers, or we're going to be able to. We never used to be able to sell online because we weren't producing enough, but now we are. We can now sell online. That's a new channel, you know. So it can be all these different things, but I would suggest, you know, all these things are tangible. You're not just saying I'm going to increase my profit and, you know, by £100,000, you know, and I'm asking for £50,000 grant, therefore I get a 2. You need to explain how that profit is broken down and how you're going to increase that profit. Okay, and then there is a question that you need to upload your quotes, or mention which quotes you've had and upload them. Okay, so again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to change my screen sharing. And I'm going to try to share the option of a line, which undoubtedly would have logged me out. Yeah, bear with me. Some of these questions get a bit confusing as we go through them. So if I jump through to value for money, again, you'll notice that there's the questions that I've got identified, show how the project costs have been arrived at, detail of forecasted impact on forecasting, and then you need to add what quotes you have. So add an investor. Under here, you would look, add an investment item, and you would say, my investment item is it's a sensor for monitoring. I'll give a description of what that product is, and then I would add a quote, and I can say, well, I've had a quote for £2,000. This is the supplier name. It's my preferred quote because I've only got one of them, so it's the quote I want to use. If that was £7,000, I need to have 3 quotes, so I need to tick which is my preferred quote of the 3 I added in. I could put a little comment in there, and I haven't got any declared interest in this supplier. In other words, it's not my brother-in-law who I've asked to supply me. You know, so basically, if you do have any interests in who your suppliers are, family, whatever, then please click yes. You doesn't matter. You can as long as you can justify why you're using them, it's fine. But don't click no. because I have had somebody go before, and you basically either get the grant taken away from you altogether, or you get at least 20% of your grant taken away from you for breaking the rules. Okay, and then you can save and add another, and I can add another one there. If I save and return, you will now see that I have basically got a quote value of £7,000. I've got my preferred supplier, but I haven't got any other quotes there. And then if I save and add another, then basically that's my first item, and then I can then go to my second item. So this is another item, and this time I've had some sensitive ones in, but I'm putting a polytunnel in as well, etc. And you start again. So you need to do this for every single item you ask for. Okay, it is a whatever ache, but it needs to be done, and it does mean you need to start getting quotes now. Because quotes aren't the quickest things to get. So you need to be going out and asking your suppliers for quotes now for all your items. Golden rule: over 3 items, then you need over £5,000, you need 3 quotes. Okay. One question is going to be: there's only one supplier for my item, so I can't get 3 quotes. One, I would say, really, there are always instances probably where you can get another quote. One of the few ways I've managed to justify that before and say there's only one quote is because a company was putting a new production line in, and they already had a certain make of production line, 2 production lines already, and it needed to feed into this one. So you could only go for that make of product, and there was only one national supplier for the UK of that product, of that equipment. Okay, so you couldn't do anything else. In the main, you can do a screen capture of an online is fine, so but I would suggest that always try to get anything over £5,000. I've also had one example recently where somebody did get a quote for under £5,000. When they came to buy the product, it had gone over £5,000. In that instance, you would need to then get an extra 2 quotes before you bought that product. Okay, and you need to do it beforehand as well. And there are horror stories of people who try to get quotes after they bought it, and invariably or often they get caught out, and then they may get a 20% penalty because they broke the rules. Okay. There is a competitive tendering register, and I'd almost suggest, I don't think it's a necessity, but I'd almost suggest trying to fill one of these in and upload it as supporting evidence, because I think it will just show that you really understand the process in its entirety. And if I show you, when I send you, I'm going to send you 5 PDF attachments, of which one of them is going to look like one of them will look like, can you see Horticultural Development Scheme window 2?
Yeah, all good, Dave.
Okay, fine. Okay, so there, on the one that says competitive tendering and public procurement, you'll notice there's a lovely little template here that they give you where you can write out your competitive tendering register, which is for the whole project. So these are the things that you're going to use, and then for each product you buy, you can fill in this little matrix here. Isn't that exciting, or is it complete overkill? Probably the latter. But this is what you're going to have to do when you're buying equipment and proving that you're following the procurement rules effectively. Okay, so why not try to start that now, upload it as supporting evidence, and you're almost answering a later question of monitoring and an evaluation that you understand the process, therefore give me the grant and I won't cause you problems later, effectively. Okay. So that's that question. And then a similar thing happens for other questions. So, and I think some of the other questions become more self-explanatory, which I spent a bit more time on the previous ones. But question 5, so this is the first question of the second stage application. Okay, so this is, you need to basically provide a project plan, and a timescale of key activities and investments. Include references to members of the business and contractors. Okay, so you have the ability to basically click on add activity, put an activity name in, give an activity description, and put a start and end date there. Okay, so that is the second part. So question 1 is provide a project plan. So you need to write up to 4,000 characters on that. So like I say, focus on members of people who are going to be implementing this, their past experience of, look, I've done this kind of thing 5 times before when I've been expanding my business previously. You know, all these kind of things start adding evidence that you understand what your project plan and timescales are, and that they are realistic. You then need to detail them individually. So examples of these could be: I need to go for planning permission, I need to get quotes on procurement, I need any sort of project specific requirements. So do I need to do groundworks before I do build something? Do I need, is there a right order to bring equipment in? Do I need to do testing on it after it's finished, etc.? Okay, so all these, you can basically click activity, fill out this section, click save, and then click add a second activity, and so on until you've got there. It says make at least 1 entry. I would suggest probably 3 or 4 at least. But if you literally can't, it's literally your project is order equipment, it arrives, I plug it in, so be it. You know, if it is what it is, then so be it. Describe how the timescales have been determined. Well, you would have spoken to suppliers. You would maybe even have letters from them saying that they can supply within a timescale. Isn't that lovely, tangible evidence? Not just saying, oh, it's going to be delivered on time. You've actually got something in proof in writing saying it. And then describe the effect of the project on production capacity. Strange question at the end of it, but you know, so what is this going to do to production capacity? Ideally, it increases it. It may not do. You know, this may, like I say, this may be a cost reduction. This may be a completely new line, which I suppose it would be new production capacity. Okay, but they do ask it specifically, so let's try to say something good if we can. Risk and risk management. Again, this is where it says make at least 5 entries. So basically, you need to think of 5 risks to your business and answer the questions: what is the risk? What's the likelihood of it happening during the project? What would be the consequences if it did happen? And what mitigation actions could I take to mitigate this risk? Okay, and what I've done below here is I have produced you a nice little matrix that if you wanted to go through and work through this document, you can type in your risk here. You can put like high, medium, low, or low, medium, high, even likelihood of it happening. What were the consequences of that happening, and what am I going to put? What mitigating actions am I going to take to stop that from happening? Okay. I always think of risks as answering the question: what are your weaknesses in a job interview? You know, so a risk could be that, oh, we don't get the funding. Well, you know, we put a good application, so hopefully that won't be the case. What happens if we're too successful and when our customers want more than we can produce? You know, these are the strengths and weaknesses question in an interview, are they? Where your weaknesses are, oh, I pay far too much attention to detail. You know, it can be a fault sometimes. You know, it's clearly not, is it? It's clearly a good thing. So those are the kind of weaknesses I like. Project management, again, provide the details of activities that will be undertaken during the implementation of the project to ensure its success. So this is wider than just getting the equipment and plugging it in. Do you need to undertake training? Is there any test marketing you need to do? Is this going to be a bit of a, do you need to do testing on the products and then sort of have further sort of investment in the future as a result of it? You know, so really try to think of everything that is going to link through you getting this equipment and turning that into a viable product at the end of it. Okay, and bearing in mind sort of 3 years is what they're suggesting is a period. Okay, and you've got 4,000 characters for that. You know, you've got a page and a quarter to write on there. So go to town. Again, if you're going to say training, what training? Don't just say, oh, we're going to train our staff. What kind of training? Do your staff need? and I'd also potentially mention something about monitoring in that as well. Have they got no? Okay. And then cross-cutting themes. There's 3 cross-cutting themes. These are the ones with 2,000 characters rather than 4,000. So half to 3/4 of a page rather than a page and a half. So you need to explain why your project is good at equality of opportunity and gender mainstreaming. So none of you are going to discriminate, and you're going to say you don't discriminate against anybody depending on their sex, colour, creed, religious beliefs, sexual persuasion, disability, whatever it may be. You know, if you've got a policy that says that, all the better. And gender mainstreaming, you know, you're not going to discriminate against women, you know, or any gender as a result of what you're doing. You know, if you are a woman owner of the business, say it. You know, it proves that, you know, you are a woman is working in the sort of high echelons of the business. So that you know, to me, gender mainstreaming is equality of opportunity as well. They're separated away, suggests that they want you to say something about it, doesn't it? Tackling poverty and social exclusion. So think about trying to employ people who are furthest away from the job market. So maybe people who are currently unemployed. NEETs, if anybody understands, NEETs, if anybody understands that terminology. Young people, again, saying things like we're going to stop migration out of rural areas by giving young people really good job opportunities. Is, you know, stopping, tackling poverty and stopping social exclusion by living in a rural area. Okay, trying to put in things like car sharing or buses to and from your employment. I'm not saying you can do that, but if you can, they're all the kind of things that will help to stop people who can't get there by public transport getting to you. And then lastly, Welsh language. You know, we've had a bit of the census gave us a bit of a blow in terms of Welsh language recently. You know, so I think they might be quite hot on this. So anything you can do that proves that what you're doing, your business is doing, is adhering to the best Welsh language possible. Fantastic. If you're not Welsh speaking, and lots of us aren't, what can you do? Can you look to make it preferable to employ somebody with Welsh language abilities? Can you put Welsh language on your packaging? Can you is there some kind of can you try to get Welsh language on your website, or and maybe those areas that you don't need to change that often because you haven't got the ability to do that yourself. Okay, so there's always something you can do in relation to that. I'm just mindful of time because, as always, we're
going on to questions as well, Dave, to go through.
Yeah.
Okay, just bear that in mind.
Okay. Well, do you want to chuck the questions out, because indicators and outcomes, basically, if I just spend 30 seconds on each of these and then try to do it. So indicators and outcomes, basically, there are different indicators and outcomes, which are number of businesses supported, which normally is 1, yourself, number of jobs created, number of jobs safeguarded, impact on turnover of the business, so how much has increased your turnover, and innovative practices of technology introduced. And basically, for each of these, you get the opportunity to say how many of them are there. So I've supported 1 business myself, I've created 2 new jobs. You get an area to say, give a bit more information about those, how you've met those targets, and how you're going to monitor those targets. Okay, so that is basically the entirety of indicators and outcome question. And basically, you literally click add indicator, you drop down box, you click on the first one, which will be number of business supported, put an answer in, save it, add another one, drop down box, number of jobs created, etc. And then the final question is finance and compliance. So describe how you intend to fund the investment in addition to the grants. So this is where you need to say that I have got a bank loan, I've got a bank statement that shows that I've got the money in the account, so I don't need a bank loan, or I've got whatever your source of match funding is. And what is the financial need for the grant? So it's a case of, well, I can only get £60,000 on match funding, and therefore I need your £40,000. because I can't afford to do it without it. And what would happen if you didn't have support? Always the answer is you either wouldn't be able to do it because you can't afford to, or it would happen much slower because you'd have to do it in a piecemeal way. Okay. We've already been through the scoring for that, and you'll get these documents, and then the checklist of documents we've already been through as well, which is your business plan, your accounts, etc. Okay, so that is that document. Wayne, let's talk questions.
Yeah, so we'll stick on the finance side a minute. Holly wants to know that if the business is successful, will they have to prove the financial projections were correct 3 years later?
Yes. In essence, now you'll already have your money in your account, okay? And in my experience, as long as you haven't been deceitful, you can sometimes miss the mark. In my experience, I'm not saying it's going to be the case in this grant, but it's been my experience in other grants. So if you say I'm going to increase my turnover by £100,000 and or my profit by £100,000, and you've increased it by £90,000, and you can show mitigation of where things went wrong potentially, then I think they will probably accept that. If you say you're going to increase your profit by £100,000 and you increase it by £1,000, potentially they could turn around and say, we want our money back. You're completely not adhered to the grant conditions. So don't get a grant at any cost. I often say that probably about 20% of the grant process is getting the grant. The other 80% is getting the money in your bank account and keeping it there. Okay, so there's no point lying for the sake of it now. Okay.
Next question: can you claim the grant payment in stages, or do you have to complete the project in entirely?
No, I see no reason. Most other grants you can grant claim in stages. There's nothing saying here you can't. Bearing in mind they said they want the project done within a year, but yeah, if you've got a 6-month project and you want to do 2 quarterly claims, I see no reason why you can't do that. Also, bearing in mind that might mean there's match funding, but also if you pay it all in one go, and you need to, as with most Welsh Government grants, you need to pay out before they give you the money back. So you need to pay out 100% of it before they give you the money back. By doing stage payments means you don't have to match fund or have to get that extra match funding for the whole amount in one go.
With regards to the match funding, Dave, apart from cash, is there any other forms of match funding that will be considered?
Yeah, so cash, overdraft, if you've got an overdraft in place, a bank loan. So if you go to your Barclays Bank, your bank, and they're willing to give you a loan, Development Bank of Wales. If you're in Pembrokeshire Lottery interest-free loan. I've had people showing they're going to cash in ISAs and all sorts of things like that before. As long as you show you've got the money and it's there and it's ready, that is acceptable.
Okay.
Sorry, Lee, I'm not sure you're trying to.
There's 2 questions from Nick. First question is the application, considering it all needs to be done by March, is there any support from Farming Connect with regards to business planning, financial to help the guys?
I believe so, and I will let Lee unmute himself. If I stop sharing, let's get Lee on the screen as well.
Thank you, Wayne, for that question. Yeah, because Farming Connect is coming to an end now, the current programme on the 19th of March, there isn't any support other than a digital surgery with somebody like David or somebody else from Landsker to talk through over the phone or digitally. There isn't any help with actually completing doing your business assessment or doing a business plan. There would have been, but because we're just coming, this deadline of the 10th of March is just coming at completely the wrong time for the current programme. But the new programme is due to start on the 1st of April. I'm not sure if David knows if there's any future windows for this grant. I'm assuming there will be, because in the new Farming Connect programme, there has been quite a big emphasis on horticulture. So when Mentor Business applied for the tender, there was a big emphasis on horticulture. So we really had to show how we were going to support horticulture. So I'm assuming I don't know if there are dates out at the moment, David, or not, but I'm assuming there will be future grant applications because there is this emphasis from policy in Welsh Government to increase the horticultural industry sector by 25%, and they're not going to do that without grant aid. So I'm not sure if David has an answer for that, but I would suggest there will probably be future, and if there is future grants windows and you want to go for one, then after the 1st of April, you will be able to access the advisory service and other support services, which will be part funded to get business plan, financial help to put all that paperwork together. What's David got up on the screen?
Okay, so this
that's the current one.
That's the current one, and this looks like it is another round starting 4th of April, which coincides beautifully with Lee Staffy's new program.
Yeah, so basically, if you're not registered with Farming Connect already, then please get in touch with the local development officer to get registered. But if you are, then that's great. And yeah, from the 1st of April, the new program, the new Farming Connect program will be up and running, new advisory service, the same delivery organization. So Landsker will be on the framework to deliver business plan advice and financial advice. So you'll be able to get some funded advice through the process, but in the next window, not the current one.
There's also small the horticultural startup there as well. So anybody's on the call, I said, if you're not horticultural business currently, then that's 11th of April to May 2023 as well. Sorry, Sarah, do you want to say something? I can't
hear you, Sarah. Yeah,
can't hear you, Sarah, for some reason.
What's going on?
You don't look like you're muted.
Nope. That's nothing. While Sarah's figuring out, Dave, a really quick question.
Yeah.
Can we submit the grant application on paper, because people are having huge problems due to the website and technical issues?
Okay, I'm going to give you a technical answer now. My gut feeling is probably they're going to say no. You need all correspondence through RBW online. Now you could, what's a technical question? You could ask the question via email, which is obviously also a technical thing, but probably, and just say you're having problems. They know their systems are not that user friendly, So I think you may get somebody sympathetic, and then you may get somebody else who works on it every day and just understand why people don't understand it, And they're wrong. It's very, very confusing. There are degrees, I'm sure, in master's degrees in RPW online, so look, again, if you're a member of Farming Connect and you want an hour's or a clinical surgery, that is available, and that's one of the things we need to start knocking off. Let's talk about the questions as well, but I might be able to help you through that, because I've been through it so many times. And claiming grants, by the way, claiming food-based grants is the only time I've ever had my clients in tears. I've lots of people, but it's actually using these systems is produced some quite big people to mush before. So,
David, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Sorry, David. Can you hear me now? Oh, thank you. Sorry, just to add that other date you showed was the first one in 2022. So they haven't released any dates as yet for the next round for what would be a third. I agree with Lee. I would imagine there would be.
Oh, it's so it's close.
22, but I will find out and let people know.
And just to get around to these two, Geraint and Emma have asked, does RPW actually measure the forecast increase in profit in future years? Just because there's so many dynamics that can influence profit, such as crop levels, result of weather, quality trends, sales, etc.
And in theory, yes, they're going to come back and they're going to ask for proof that you're doing what you said you're going to do. But like I say, if something act of God happens or the whole market goes down, then just thinking about an example out of category, but milk prices. If you said if you were developing something in the dairy industry and you were basing it on a certain price and the price halves, your revenue is going to go down as a result of it, isn't it? All you can do is make the assumption on the day you're making it. I think as long as you can justify you haven't forcibly got money, and blatantly lied or said something that's never going to have a chance of happening, then I think you should be fine. Like I said, I've never had any of my clients ever have to pay any money back, and a number of them haven't quite hit the mark where they needed to be. Okay, but we can always justify why they haven't quite hit the mark, and that's either in terms of profitability, number of staff, etc. So be realistic, because you don't want to get yourself into situations that's going to make you lose sleep over the next 3 years because you're waiting for RPW Online to ring up. It's not no amount of money in my view is worth that. So just be honest, give yourself a break. And also you're probably gonna get caught out if you're too bullish. They're gonna question what you're gonna do, because RPW Online and the grant people want you to give you the money, and they want you to do what you say you're going to do. It's the easiest thing for them, because if everybody does, if it's really easy for them to get the money out and really easy to audit, their job's really easy, and we all love an easy job. Okay, they don't want audit coming back and saying, why did you give this money? They haven't done what they said you did, because then it gives focus on them if they made a bad decision. Okay.
Last question then, Dave, is how long after submission would we hear back if we've been successful?
Okay, it doesn't say on this grant. Other grants, very, very similar, I've got exactly the same kind of process and thing. I've said 30 days from your expression of interest submission, and then 90 days from the second stage side. So basically 30 days. You then have 30 days to say yes or no and to proceed to the next stage. And from that, when you say yes to that, it's in a 90-day application process. So this is part of the PowerPoint that you're going to get sent through that I didn't get to, which was my top tips for grants. So just think about the timescales. You have probably got at least a 5 or 6 month turnaround from going for this grant, putting an application in, to getting the money in your account at the very, very, very least. If that doesn't suit your timetable, if you need things in place by this April to hit the seasonality of what you're doing, this grant isn't for you. You're never going to turn it around. Do yourself a favour and don't go for it. There's no chance. So think about 5 or 6 months. To give you an idea, a previous food grant said they had a 90-day turnaround, and it took 11 months for them to give decisions to businesses. Okay, it was sort of during COVID as well, but still, how you can plan. Everybody was planning for 90 days, and it took 11 months. Ridiculous. So you can't break the rules. That doesn't mean they can't break the rules. And the way they get around it is they'll ask you for something on day 89. For something extra, and then because you haven't put a full application in because they've asked you for something extra, the 90 days can start again. That is, believe it or not, they get out clause, so they're not breaking the rules. They are adhering to their framework. Clearly
Thank you, David. That's lovely. And thank you, Wayne. I think you've done a great second in command there with the questions. I think it was a brilliant job. Thank you very much. And just to let everybody know on the call that we will circulate the presentation, David's presentation, to everybody as well. Sarah, did you want to say anything from Tyfu Cymru before I close?
No, I think we've sent out an e-bulletin recently, but just to let everybody know that our team will be joining Farming Connect and delivering horticulture as part of the main programme. So really looking forward to it. I think it's a good thing for the future of horticulture.
Yeah, no, totally agree. So that just brings me to say thank you to David, and like I said, thank you to Wayne for providing the presentation and hopefully providing you with some more background to the grant application process, what Welsh Government require, what they want to see. Hopefully it hasn't completely deterred you from completing an application form. And also, like we said, from the 1st of April, Farming Connect will be able to support with any business plans or financial planning you want to do to get prepared for any future grants. But yeah, just like to say thank you to David and Wayne and Sarah for joining us. Yeah, hopefully you can have a pleasant evening. David, did you want to say something final?
Just final. On presentations, my email address is going to be on there. So obviously, if you have got any questions, I'm mindful that I probably had about 15 minutes left to do the presentation, and we didn't get there. So it's on the slides. It's not rocket science, to be fair, at the end of it. So please email it for me if you've got any questions as well. And within reason, I'll answer them. If I stop answering, you've pushed it too far. Please ask questions. And I hope I haven't dissuaded you from doing it. It's great. Grant money is great when it ties into what you're doing. So if it ties into what you're doing, the timescales, etc., go through the process and do it. It can be really, 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 really beneficial. So I hope I haven't put people off who are eligible and were thinking of going for it.
I'm sure you haven't. No, definitely. But yeah, no, and thank you for that. That offer of your time and that after the meeting as well tonight. So yeah, so I'll leave you to enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you, David, Wayne and Sarah. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks all.